This matter with the Cubans and the nurses should tell us everything that we need to know. Barbados does not currently have Cuban medical staff or Cuban nurses, but I will be the first to go to the line and to tell you that we could not get through the pandemic without the Cuban nurses and the Cuban doctors. I will also be the first to tell you that we paid them the same thing that we pay Bajans, and that the notion, as was peddled not just by this government in the US, but the previous government, that we were involved in human trafficking by engaging with the Cuban nurses was fully repudiated and rejected by us. Now, I don't believe that we have to shout across the seas, but I am prepared, like others in this region, that if we cannot reach a sensible agreement on this matter, then if the cost of it is the loss of my visa to the US, then so be it. But what matters to us is principles. And I have said over and over that principles only mean something when it is inconvenient to stand by it. Now, we don't have to shout, but we can be resolute. And I therefore look forward to standing with my CARICOM brothers. I wish I could say brothers and sisters, but brothers, to be able to ensure that we explain that what the Cubans have been able to do for us, far from approximating itself to human trafficking, has been to save lives and limbs and sight for many a Caribbean person.
Hello, brothers and sisters. I really hope you're all doing fine from wherever you're watching me from. Now, there is an emergency. And we are seeing a lot of Caribbean leaders coming together to support whatever is happening with Cuba. They are standing with the people of Cuba. Now, the US has been against Cuba for the longest time, and they are not willing, and they are not going to let any of their allies in the Caribbean or in Africa to support Cuba. So the Caribbean is trying to violate whatever the master wants. So let's watch this video, then have a very quick discussion at the end of it. Thank you so much.
Vice Chancellor of the University of the West Indies, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles, is supporting the move by Prime Minister Dr. Keith Rowley not to be intimidated of the support given by Cuban health services. Earlier this month, US President Donald Trump and Senator Marco Rubio criticized Cuba's medical missions, labeling them as forced labor and threatening visa sanctions against countries employing Cuban doctors. Speaking at the commissioning of the Port of Spain's Central Block on Monday, Dr. Rowley defended Trinidad and Tobago's right to hire Cuban health professionals. And at the UWI's Campus Council meeting on Tuesday morning, Professor Sir Hilary Beckles touched on the issue.
I saw the Prime Minister of the Republic here, Dr. Rowley, making it clear that this country will not be intimidated in respect of the support given it by the Cuban health services. And we're being told that we have to pay a price if we continue to collaborate on a regional basis. I see the Prime Minister of Antigua and Barbuda, Gaston Brown, has said the same thing.
And Sir Hilary said the University of the West Indies has been leading from the front in terms of this regional unity and partnership.
Of Havana right now, when you walk into the center square of the University of Havana, you will see a building. And on that building, it says, University of the West Indies, Center for Sustainable Development. There, in Havana, in their university, we built that there, working with the government and people of Cuba. And I was honored to go over there and pull that ribbon to allow the UV.
Tensions are rising between the United States and the Caribbean over one crucial issue: Cuban doctors.
Just came back from California. And if I never there again in my life, I will ensure that the sovereignty of Trinidad and Tobago is known to its people and respected by it.
The Trump administration has accused Cuba of exploiting its medical professionals, threatening visa sanctions against countries that participate in the program. But in a rare show of defiance, Caribbean leaders are refusing to back down.
Does anybody expect that I to go because I want to keep a visa, that I would let 60 persons from the poor and working people to die?
Trinidad and Tobago's Prime Minister, Keith Rowley, has made it clear his country will not bow to Washington's pressure, even if it means losing access to the US for himself and his officials. For decades, Cuban doctors have played an essential role in Caribbean healthcare systems, filling gaps in medical expertise that local institutions struggle to meet. The US claims this is forced labor, but regional leaders argue it's a lifeline for their people. The question remains, will more Caribbean nations stand up to Washington, or will economic pressure force them into compliance? Prime Minister Ralph Gonsalves of St. Vincent and the Grenadines has taken an even bolder stance. Addressing a packed audience, he made it clear, if losing his visa is the price for keeping Cuban doctors in his country, then so be it. For many in the Caribbean, this is not just a political issue, it's a matter of life and death. In St. Vincent alone, 60 patients rely on Cuban doctors for life-saving dialysis treatments. Without them, they would have no access to care. The Trump administration's threats to sanction countries using Cuban medical aid could disrupt essential healthcare services across.
So I was in Miami or Hialeah on Monday, and when there's a video where you were recognizing Elena Garcia and Dario Fernandez and Tomas Regalado, everybody applauded. They're so excited about your being the Secretary of State. Your homegrown son, and so they're just all excited. The other thing they're excited about is that they have somebody that is going to care about Venezuela and Cuba and Haiti and Nicaragua, all the problems, because you've been so vocal. So I guess, can you just go through sort of one by one and say, look, we know what are our options? Not that you know exactly what you're going to do, and a lot of these decisions will be made by somebody else anyway, but what are, like right now, look at what's going on in Venezuela. The Biden administration's allowed oil to flow. He stole the election, completely violated what Biden told him he would do. Maria Corina Machado probably was only alive because of your hard work making sure that Donald Trump put a tweet out. You look at Cuba now. They just dropped the state-sponsored terrorism, which makes no sense. We've got people like Jose Daniel Ferrer in prison. Kids as young as 14 in prison for peaceful protests. So, give me some of your ideas of what is possible.
Let's take one, but let's start with Haiti, because in many ways it's globally complex. And I think the chairman sort of alluded to this a moment ago. There's a fundamental problem in Haiti in that there is no legitimacy of authority. And I say this in recognition of the fact that some of the national police forces in Haiti have been extraordinarily brave. Despite being outgunned and outmanned, these guys and gals have stuck at their post and fought back against armed gangs. You know, when the most powerful person in any nation state is nicknamed barbecue, that is not a good thing. And this guy obviously is not named that for good reasons. He's not a cook. These are bad gang elements that are operating within Haiti and have destabilized not just Haiti, but threatened to destabilize the Dominican Republic, not to mention the migratory pressure that it places on the United States, on the Bahamas, and on other places in the region. There is no easy answer. The Kenyans are there, and I can tell you, I think they deserve a lot of credit for being willing to take on that mission. In recent days, missions from various other countries have arrived, El Salvador being among them, to sort of contribute to that effort. I don't think anyone can tell you they have a master plan for how you fix that overnight. I do think it does begin with stability and security. You've got to establish some baseline security, and it's not going to come from a U.S. military intervention. So to the extent that we can encourage foreign partners, and I would include foreign partners in the Western Hemisphere, who should be contributing to this effort, to provide some level of stability and security in Haiti so that you can explore the opportunities to have a transitional government that has legitimacy, that can ultimately lead to the conduct of elections, and then have governing bodies in that country that can bring about a nation state that can begin to build some of the things you need in order for permanency. But it's going to take a long time. And I say this with sadness in my heart. There have been good times and there have been bad times and worse times in Haiti, but sadly there's not really been a golden era in Haiti's history, and your heart breaks for these people and for what they've gone through. But you also, as a policymaker in the United States, recognize the implications it's had on our country, not just in the migratory pressures it's placed on us, but as I pointed out earlier, the threat it poses on a daily basis to destabilizing the Dominican Republic. You mentioned Nicaragua. It's a very weird situation, for lack of a better term. The Sandinistas earlier, one of the first things they did in the new year is they kicked out every nun in the country. They've gone to war with the Catholic Church, which was the last institution in the country capable of standing up to them. But now they've begun this process of amending their fake constitution to basically create a family dynasty, so that Ortega and his wife will now be co-presidents. There's no democracy that's been completely wiped out. They have literally put plane loads of opposition figures and exported them here to the United States and around the world. They literally arrested anyone who signed up to run for president. They arrested every single, you signed up to run for president, they put you in jail. So it's a big challenge, but our national interest is most challenged. Number one, because of migratory pressure. Number two, because the Nicaraguan regime is allowing people to fly into Nicaragua visa-free from anywhere in the world and then transit to the United States. They have become the point of entry for people from all over the world because you come in without any visa. They charge you $1,000 or whatever the going rate is today. And from there, you get on the migratory route and into the United States. They have been direct contributors to the migratory crisis we face at our southern border. And the third is the Nicaraguans have basically invited the Russians to establish a military naval presence in Nicaragua, in our hemisphere. That poses a threat to our national security. That needs to be addressed. Venezuela, sadly, is not governed by government. It's governed by a narco-trafficking organization that has empowered itself of a nation state. And we have seen, I believe, upwards of 7, 8, 9 million Venezuelans have just left the country. More are expected to leave. I was in strong disagreement with the Biden administration because they got played the way that I knew they would get played. They entered into negotiations with Maduro. He agreed to have elections. The elections were completely fake. They leveraged migration against us to get those concessions, and now they have these general licenses where companies like Chevron are actually providing billions of dollars of money into the regime's coffers, and the regime kept none of the promises that they made. So all that needs to be re-explored, because in Venezuela, you have the Russian presence, you have a very strong Iranian presence. The Iranians, in fact, are exploring, or in fact are beginning to build drone factories for the manufacture of Iranian drones in our own hemisphere. Not to mention the long practice of the Venezuelan regime of providing real but illegitimate passports to operatives for Hezbollah in our own hemisphere. And lastly, and I leave it lastly to Cuba because it's one that's been more enduring, the problem in Cuba basically is that despite being a communist regime and Marxism not working, is that they've decided, and they thought what they would do is that they would create this holding company. It's called Gaesa. It is a company that they own by the Cuban military, and that holding company owns everything that makes money in Cuba. If it makes money in Cuba, they own it, and it generates revenue for them. The Miami Herald just did an expose on Gaesa. And while you have electrical blackouts and you have all these other problems economically in Cuba, Gaesa is sitting on billions of dollars that they've generated for their permanency. In 2017, the Trump administration sanctioned Gaesa. Unfortunately, the Biden administration lifted some of those sanctions and restrictions a couple of years ago, which increased the amount of money they're able to generate through things like manipulating remittances and the like. And then yesterday, the Biden administration announced they were rescinding all of the sanctions on Gaesa, which basically the sanctions were this. You can do business with an independent individual Cuban, but you cannot, it's the regime that doesn't allow it. You cannot do business with anything owned by that government-run entity. And yesterday, they lifted the sanctions on them. Now, the new administration is not bound by that decision, but nonetheless, that's what's in place. Ultimately, the reality, the moment of truth is arriving. Cuba is literally collapsing, both generationally in terms of all the young people leaving, but it's also collapsing economically. They are now living on 20 and 21-hour rolling blackouts and some days longer because Marxism doesn't work, because they're corrupt, and because they're inept. And they're going to have a choice to make, those that are in charge there. Do they open up to the world? Do they allow the individual Cuban to have control over their economic and political destiny, even though it threatens the security and stability of the regime? Or do they triple down and just say, we'd rather be the owners and controllers of a fourth world country that's falling apart and has lost 10% of its population in the last 2 years. And that's a dynamic that they're facing right now. I hope that they will choose the path of empowering the individual Cuban so that the individual Cuban has the ability to do what the peoples of virtually every other country in the hemisphere have been able to do at least once in the last 60 years, and some more than once, and that is elect their leaders, vote for their leaders. You think about what happened here today. The Cuban people have no idea what it's like to have an authority figure or someone in charge and power, like I am as a U.S. Senator, sitting here having to answer questions from his colleagues, and also having to have people in the back screaming and protesting against you. You can't do that to a Cuban official. You can't question their decisions. The Cuban people have never been able to participate in a political process for over almost 70 years now. And they're entitled to that as much as the people of Colombia and Argentina and Paraguay and Peru and virtually every other country in the region has enjoyed.
So let's assume you have this job, you're confirmed, you have the job for 4 years. What would your definition of success be?
With regards to generally?
Your job. You're just...
The alignment of our foreign policy to our national interest has been defined the security, prosperity of the American people. And that's it. And by the way, I would define that as success for the country. What I would define as success for the State Department is not just that alignment, but making the State Department highly relevant again. Sadly, and I think I've shared this with you in some of our meetings with many of my colleagues, what has happened over the last 20 years under multiple administrations is the influence of the State Department has declined at the expense of other agencies and also at the expense of national security councils because it takes so long for the State Department to take action. And so increasingly you stop getting invited to the meetings and they stop putting you in charge of things because it takes too long to get a result. So we want the State Department to be relevant again, and it should be, because the State Department has a plethora of talented people who are subject matter experts and who have skills in diplomacy, and it's not being fully utilized because increasingly on issue after issue, we've seen the State Department marginalized because of internal inertia, because of the way the structure works. So we have to be able to we have to be at that table when decisions are being made, and the State Department has to be a source of creative ideas and effective implementation. So I would define making the State Department relevant again in the setting of our foreign policy is critical. And I think that's something that maybe is not as perceived by the general public as it is by those of us who watch it on a daily basis.
Thank you.
Thanks.
News now help us. A plea this evening from Jamaican medical students studying in Cuba. They're finding it difficult to access basic necessities like toiletries and food. Giovanni Dennis has been speaking with some of the students. Now, we've distorted their voices at their request as they fear backlash.
Like this might look scanty, but it's like a lot of people.
A recording by a Jamaican medical student in Cuba showing crowds outside supermarkets waiting for upwards of 6 hours just to check what food items are available.
Most of the times I have to wake up from 2 a.m. in the morning, and I'd have to wait until 9 a.m. to go to a store, as in we'd be waiting outside, even during the pandemic, and like we sneak outside during curfew hours, and we're hidden in bushes and stuff like that, waiting for the store to be open.
They've risked sending us these short videos demonstrating their plight and challenge in accessing necessities.
The lack of medication, the lack of supplies, such as sanitary napkins or pads, lotion, soap, shampoo, those necessities. And when I speak of the lack of food supplies, we're talking about basic things that we could have found back home, they're not here. So like your tin food, when chicken is scarce.
They've shared one of several letters they say they've written to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs seeking help. They say they've also reached out to the scholarship department in the Ministry of Finance.
We're not getting any assistance from the government or from our embassy here in terms of getting the items from Jamaica to Cuba. Our parents have done all that they can do in terms of buying items, packaging the items and having the items shipped to us. They even found a shipping company, paid all the charges and everything, which was very, very costly.
The parents will dig wherever and borrow from wherever and find wherever to pay for everything, just for them to just do the documentation that only they have the power to do. Just as Guyana, St. Lucia, Dominica, Suriname, Belize, And I can go on and give all the countries that have sent in several packages in the country. And even more of a now when things easier, when they can get this duty free or whatever, because Cuba relaxed restrictions.
The students insist they are grateful to the government of Cuba because they try to make the best of a difficult economic situation. They also say the Jamaican ambassador in Cuba is currently helping with clearing one shipment for a small group of the more than 150 struggling Jamaican students. But they feel disheartened and alone, especially seeing other countries like Guyana helping their students.
I can't even begin to express how I'm feeling. We've been trying for over a year now, more than a year to get stuff here. And it's not that it's not a case that it's not possible. It is more than possible. Today I helped the St. Lucians take off their barrel off the truck. That ship passed through Jamaica. Can you imagine over 80 students or more? Everybody get a barrel. We've been trying, we've tried.
The students we spoke with are beneficiaries of the Jamaica-Cuba Bilateral Medical Scholarship Program. Our news team has reached out to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs for a response, but there has been no reply to an email sent on Monday. Calls to the minister's phone went unanswered. We've also written to the Finance Ministry. Giovanni Dennis, TV.
Now, brothers and sisters, this is whatever I call the modern day slavery. Slavery never ended. It is the mentality of the people that shifted to believe that slavery ended, because if we are seeing the US and the European countries trying to tell us how to relate with some other countries, then it becomes a problem. It becomes real-time slavery, because if we are not going to get away from the chains of slavery, if we are not going to get away from the chains of the US and the Western countries, we are doomed. And it is very sad, in fact, indeed very sad, to see black countries being fenced, not fenced, black countries trying to be red flagged, being given sanctions for doing things in a different way from whatever the US or the Western countries requires of us. Now, I'm very grateful and I'm very, very much happy that the Caribbean countries are now taking a stand firm against all these things that are happening to them. Now, we saw the Barbados trying to give a statement that they are trying to stand with Cuba, and they will do all it takes to make sure that the Cuban people get justice, and the Cuban country are not treated bad because the US is against whatever is happening in Cuba. Now, black folks, I want us to really talk about some things. Now, you remember the Israel-Palestine war, right? You remember the Ukraine-Russia war. I saw a lot of black countries in Africa and in the Caribbean trying to take sides just to impress the US and to impress Russia and all this other stuff. And my question really remained, what was the outcome? What was it really necessary to take sides? Because in these African countries and in these Caribbean countries, we've had real issues to talk about. We are still fighting corruption. We're still fighting bad leadership. We're still fighting exploitation of our own mineral resources. We are still fighting neocolonialism to date. We are still fighting poverty. We are still fighting so many other things that were degenerated by these Western countries. And the fact that we try to lose focus and try to bring some other let me not say these words, because we are trying to focus on the wrong things. Because why? Tell me why an African country like Tanzania, like South Africa, or like any other will take sides with a war that is not even happening in their own continent. Tell me why will leaders from Africa travel to the Russia or to the Russian Federation, or travel to the other side in the US just to impress the government of the US, just to say that I'm not siding with this side. I'm not here, but I'm here. Tell me why. Now, the last time I checked, we really even do not need to have the US so that we do have development in our own countries. We do not even need to have Russia to do development in our own countries. We just need to go into a mutual agreement, sign an MOU, then do business as equal partners, because in Africa we have the mineral resources, we have the manpower, we have everything in this continent. It is the fact that our leaders are still leaning low and accepting to be exploited, and trying to bring some rogue policies in Africa that do not really talk about, or that are not do not accept the culture in the land. Something that I've always not understood is the fact that we still need to impress the colonizer, someone who took away our culture, someone who tried so much to kill us. The people they tried to wipe out is us. The people they are trying to fight, the people they are exploiting day and night, it is this continent. It is our African diaspora brothers. So I do not know why our leaders are so much obsessed with going to the US, going to all these European countries. Some have sold their conscience to the devil, and they can do anything as much as they are being paid in millions or billions. So if we are all not going to stand with the conscience we have, if we are not going to stand with the morality of the African continent, we are going to lose it big time. I'm very much happy to see the Caribbean trying to stand together. How I wish the CARICOM could be lively and try to unite with the African continent and bring things to be better, because this is one people. We are just we are demographically divided, because some are on the other side and others are on this side. But if we really come together with some good ideas, if we really can sit down and understand the problems that we have, we have some real problems in Africa and in the Caribbean. We are fighting some real problems. Tell me how you are going to conduct a massive civic education. Try to wipe out the brainwashed brains or individuals that exist in our own countries, because people have been brainwashed to think that the Western is the way to go. That people have been brainwashed to think that without the US, Africa cannot move on. That Africa can't do anything if it were not being supported by the Western countries. And the fact that a lot has been looted, a lot has been taken from Africa. No one is talking about that. We've had puppet leadership for the longest time. We've had their puppets being installed in our systems so that they continue doing whatever they have been doing for the longest time. If we really are serious about the unity of black folks, if we are really serious about how things should work out, then we should stand together regardless of whatever they think of us. Tell me why we do not have a direct flight from Africa, from Ghana, from Nigeria, from Kenya, from Tanzania to the Caribbean. Tell me why. Why should someone moving from Kenya or from Nigeria or from Ghana go through the US to go through to the Caribbean? There is a real problem that should be talked about, because if we are continue to talk about these things without a solution, then it is better we stop talking about them. I saw the Caribbean leader, the Barbados Prime Minister, Mia Mottley, was trying to address the fact that they are trying so hard to have a direct flight from Ghana to the Caribbean, of which it is 2 years later. They have never actualized this. And they keep on talking about the transformation that should come across, the transformation that should be done to make sure that black folks are united. But they have never actualized whatever they say. They keep on talking without solutions. It is another thing talking, another thing to do something. We really need actions at the moment, because we are seeing the world is uniting against the black folks. And it is time that black folks should also unite themselves to fight the oppression that is yet to come. We are yet to see more. This red flagging and all this giving sanctions and trying to bully black countries will still continue. As long as we are not united, nothing is going to change. The narrative is not going to change. We must first change the way we think as black folks. We must think in a very wide perspective. We must think on how to transform Africa, on how to transform the Caribbean, on how to make sure that this division does not still occur. We've been so much divided that this person calls themselves Jamaican, this Dominican, this American, this and all those stuff. They want to be recognized by their nationality, but not by their race. And if we really continue this way, where are we heading to? We've seen that the white folks are united against black folks. And when they needed the unity, they went to the Berlin Conference. They divided Africa without the consent of black folks. They went there, they divided Africa as a piece of meat. And after that conference, our brothers were taken to the other side. And those who remained in this continent still suffer the consequences of colonization. So we need to think and start talking about this. We should start decolonizing whatever was colonized. And we should start changing the narrative that has run through the bloodstream of black folks. We are having a culture that is not ours in Africa. Believe me not. So many people have copied the Western culture. So many people want to behave like the Hollywood movies they see. So many things are happening. And we need to start thinking in a positive way. We shouldn't buy their ideas in Africa. An enemy cannot fight you and give you the ideas on how to defeat him. Unless we forget. Unless we are not okay. We must start by decolonizing our minds. We must start by changing the narrative in Africa, changing the education system, calling out on all black folks to come together and unite this continent, unite the Caribbean, unite all the African diaspora. Then we can start talking about development. Thank you so much for having taken the time to watch this video. I appreciate so much, brothers and sisters. If it's your first time on this channel, please consider subscribing, sharing, and liking the video as well. Thank you so much.